John Didion famously said that we tell ourselves stories in order to survive. Sometimes I think that one of my major skills, I think all of our lives contain like a certain amount of ambiguity, a certain amount of constant change that makes them almost impossible, that drive us completely bonkers. And as someone with a lot of health issues that at various points were very serious, I think I learned to deal with the ambiguity and deal with that level of uncertainty. All of our lives have uncertainty. That was the nature of the uncertainty of my life for a long time. And continues to be. The skill that I learned was changing the story quickly as needed. I think when I think about times when I have really succumbed to despair and or done harm to myself psychologically or physically, it's been due to an inability or an unwillingness to change the story I was telling myself about myself. For instance, concrete example, I was telling myself a story that I was a certain kind of student, that I lived a certain kind of life, and then when my body stopped being able to actually do that, I wasn't able to come up with a different story. So I just kept living that one out, even though it was no longer physically available to me, until I just completely wore myself down. But I think more recently what I've been able to do in the last few years is learning to deal with setbacks or deal with uncertainty, deal with disappointment by rapidly changing the story in my mind to accommodate. So, for example, these past few months I have been running. I have just been running non-stop. And I came here to see my family and I just have completely crashed. I guess in a way I am so privileged because my body must feel so safe here in the company of my family that it went, oh thank God we can stop running, and it just sort of collapsed quite amazingly. And so I guess what the story I'm trying to reframe for myself now as I sit here and I'm so exhausted, I'm so I haven't really been leaving the house, the garden. I've just been sort of lying around sleeping hours and hours every day, and I'm rewriting the story that I'm telling myself about this trip. It's not going to be like the last couple here. It's going to be a trip of relaxing, detoxing, letting some of the stress leak out of my body. Reading. I haven't been reading. For the last couple of months I've been so wired that I have neither read an entire book. There was one or two, but I've barely read a single entire book from beginning to end. Nor have I watched a television show or a film or anything. I have completely lost my ability to sit with any kind of fiction. I just was so wired I couldn't relax to the extent to which one might interact with the idea of suspending one's disbelief, taking interest in something that didn't actually happen. It's funny as well because it's such a documented and discussed phenomenon, this idea of going back to the place where you were a child and to the family structure and feeling and regressing, and that this is a nightmarish thing that happens to people. Meanwhile, I'm kind of hoping that happens. I'm actively hoping I regress into a teenage iteration of myself, not the neurosis, but the calm. I know that sounds like an odd thing to ascribe to a teenager. I think what I'm realizing is I've lived with a lot of uncertainty the last few years. I've not had stable health and I've not had stable employment or whatever. And while I am still kind of physically at rest, or there are months when I'm not functioning, I'm very rarely relaxed because I'm always trying to invent a new plan for survival. I'm always trying to work out the next plan, the next story. It's a very tiring way to live. And I wrote this thing the other day. I was lying in the garden and I was thinking about when I was here last September, 1 year ago, and how my dad suggested I take a wind bath. I'd been sick in my room and he suggested that I just go outside and let the air and the elements kind of interact. I remember being so surprised by the choice of words because I've been thinking so much about moonbathing and Anais Nin's thing about moonbathing and the mysticalism of it. And I went out and I listened to Diana Aeneas by Henry Purcell, and the Mistral blew all over me. And it was so mystical. I was writing it and I was thinking, I think I was raised without religion, but within a Catholic lineage, in a Catholic country. Catholicism is very mystical and dramatic, and I think sometimes there was like such like an obvious Catholicism shaped hole. And I think sometimes that like the aesthetics and the feeling and the mythology of this place, of the Midi, and specifically kind of going towards the Camargue, kind of has that place in my mind. Like I'm very into the kind of superstitions, the legends, the stories and mythologies about the winds and the certain landscapes. I think a lot of my mysticism is sort of tied up here, and it's funny because people sort of think France is really like austere, kind of genteel, chic, snooty place, but I have this relationship with this very particular part of it that to me has always been like wild. It kind of maybe is equivalent to how like, you know, Americans used to see like the West, the final frontier, like this kind of long, empty, flat place with its own mythologies and its own sort of magic. Anyway, I haven't really been interacting with the Camargue that much because I've been in my bed, but this summer I was kind of manic. But last summer I had very bad pneumonia, and it was the first time in a really long time that I wasn't plotting or planning my next move, because I knew in that moment, I always in the back of my mind, even when I'm telling myself that I'm resting, I'm always in the back of my mind writing something or thinking about filming something or planning something. And when I had pneumonia, I just knew that like my only goal right now is to rest, because if I don't do this right, if I don't fully commit to just literally truly doing nothing, this could be quite dangerous, because it was quite bad. I had this period where like I wasn't even trying to like, you know, rest, but rest in a way where I'm bettering myself, because I tell myself that while I'm resting I'm going to watch all of the Truffaut films. Do you know what I mean? Like I was watching The L Word and eating as much as I could. The weirdest thing was it was like my brain relaxed for the first time in a very long time. It wasn't trying to make a plan or work things out or come up with a new story. It was just sort of there was like a level of acceptance and a level of giving up control perhaps, and just being like, the only thing that matters is I just lay still and entertain myself and I don't have to be doing anything impressive. You know, my first thought when I kind of came here and collapsed was like, I need to come up with a new story. I need to tell myself a story about this time that's all about relaxing and letting go and like productivizing that. Like, this is what I need. I can't do any of the things I intend to do in September if I don't first like get this resting done. And then I thought, well, what if I don't tell myself a story at all? And my whole body just went, oh God, please. I have like a plan. I have a job to start in autumn as we go into like the last 4 months of this year. I think I want to just give my brain a rest. I talked in one of my videos recently about how for the last few months it hasn't felt like peace was an option, so I just decided to try and balance bad chaos with good chaos. And someone commented that she'd been watching my videos for a while and that it occurred to her that I was never really an adolescent. I was sick throughout my adolescence. I wasn't thrown into the chaos of life at that age. Nor in my early 20s was I like out in the world making a mess. And now I'm out in the world making a mess, and I'm a little bit old. In a way, 27. To be having my first encounter with the world and its messes, but there we go. I was thinking the other day that like I am so kind of immature for my age now, and I have so much wisdom, and for the last like 10 years everyone's been like, oh, she seems so much older than her age, because I was sort of able to handle illness, which isn't necessarily a transferable skill, to be able to sort of elegantly handle what happens when you leave your house. I'll be behind for the next while, and I will once again be ahead of the curve when I'm 90 and all my friends are like, suddenly we can't move, and I'll be like, oh guys, that reminds me, I've been here, I've worn this t-shirt, let me fill you all in. Which would hopefully, I guess what I learned last year was that I had this condition. I got really sick and I completely let go, and all that mattered was that I lay still and take my drugs and breathe and try to breathe. And then all of this sort of stuff worked itself out. All of these things that I was so unclear about, because I've been trying so hard to work it all out for months, kind of revealed itself to me. Like, I think when you let your brain rest, it can speak to you better. You can notice signs around you more. This is speaking mystically more than normal because I'm in Kumar cowgirl mode, but more strange, synchronicitous, magical, knock me over the head signs happened sort of last autumn than in any other period of my life. And I think it's because I was so not trying to force any narrative or any idea or any plan onto my life. I think I was finally just existing. I was sort of at peace. I wasn't peaceful exactly. I wasn't, I was concerned about all these different things, but I was sort of letting life live me instead of constantly trying to like regain control and fighting every moment. I don't know if this is making sense, but I think sometimes we have to like stop trying in order to let things happen. In The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron talks about this, and I think it's true about creativity, and I think it's true about life, that sometimes you just need to let go. And I have been like a clenched little butthole the last while. I know I post these videos and like I show a montage of the fun stuff, but I've actually been really putting so much pressure on myself and really trying to scramble to like gain control over everything these past months. And I really did just come here and collapse. Like also, like I'm basically like intellectual, right? And I don't say that meaning, that's probably not the right word. I don't mean like I'm so clever and I'm so whatever. I just mean like, I feel like there's people whose primary source of meaning and fulfillment in life comes from lived experiences, physical experiences, going to the party, being on the mountain. And then there are people whose primary sort of source of fulfillment and meaning in life is like spirituality, kind of, or like more spiritual ideas. And then there's people who really derive the meaning and the importance of something from the thoughts and the ideas around it, from the story, from the idea that like something can be said about it or made about it or observed about it that is beautiful. People who are interested in philosophy, but also, like the women who gossip around the town square, people for whom the vision of the story is like very important. And I think I'm very much that kind of person. And I think getting sick and for a long time not having access to like experience sort of doubled that down. But now I'm in a different phase of life and maybe I just need to learn how to let things be. I think there was part of me that was like, when I got sick, was like, okay, screw you. Maybe I can't leave the house. Maybe I can't do that thing. I have my thoughts. And when I heard people talk about like meditation and how like, oh, you release your thoughts, you're just present with the leaf. I was like, that sounds boring and dumb. But I'm wrecked and maybe it's time I just listen to the world for a bit. Final weather-derived metaphor. There's a thing here called an episode 7, y'all. It's where it's really hot all summer long. And then the heat is pushed across the plains. It has nowhere to go. There's no sea. There's nowhere to escape. So it gets pushed up the Cevennes. It's a mountain range. And of course, as the heat rises and the air rises up the Cevennes, it gets to higher altitudes, it cools, and it falls as rain. And the rain falls in these amazingly dramatic, sudden, intense storms all over the Midi. It follows a hot summer. It's almost always in September. We're entering episode 7 y'all season. It rained last night. It's the intense heat unbreaking of the summer and then suddenly breaking and crashing down, and this like immense release of pressure, but the release is also sort of feels like a destruction. I am such a drama queen. But I feel maybe I'm kind of, I was looking out at the rain last night and I thought I'm sort of an episode 7 y'all right now. I've been holding it together and stewing in this heat and running and being on fire in this way, and now I just the heat has been pushed and pushed and pushed, and it can be pushed no further.